Hello, and this is a talk on professional witchcraft with me, Liam, and
Chris.
from Witchcraft. So, professional witchcraft, what is it essentially? Is it literally just charging money to cast spells? What? We do a lot of that, don't we?
Essentially, to a certain extent, I guess so. Professional witchcraft, it becomes, for us, is about our definition, isn't it?
Well,
People
what is
go on
witchcraft?
No, it goes on about a case of what kind of witch are you? Is always the question
Right.
we get, isn't it? It's kind of like, because you've got to be, a sea witch or a eclectic witch or one of these new labels that you've got to have these days.
Yeah, I think people, when they're picking a service, they want to know the type of service you're offering. And maybe the problem with us is we'll be whatever you want us to be. It's literally a case of if you're paying us for our magical knowledge and assistance.
Yeah.
So whereas a lot of professionals, whether it's psychics or magical practitioners, priests, priestesses and that kind of thing,
Yeah.
they'll give you a
Clergy.
specific kind of flavour. Whereas for us it's a case of you're coming for us for anything magic or occult related. So if you come to us because you want to be rich and you're coming because you want us to help you get rich by using magic, we'll take, okay, what paradigm are you in? Do you practice a religion? Do you have any kind of magical practice?
What are your moralities?
What is your ethics and moralities? And we'll go from there and design something for you and take the approach you want to take. It's a little bit different for other people because they use a magical system or they're part of some kind of religious group, which we also get involved. So for a Christian coming to us, we'll work and use Christian magic.
Yeah.
For a Wiccan, we'll use Wiccan. For an atheist, we'll just, use quantum physics.
Yeah. Just to explain where we are and where they are and what they need to do in order to get to that next stage, whatever that new stage is.
Yeah, we're kind of like GPs of the magical world.
Yeah.
So we do a little bit of everything, and if you want to specialise or learn a specialist thing, we'll take you to a certain extent.
Yeah. And if we need to refer you, we'll refer you.
Yeah, we can help you find someone that just specialises in that. But yeah, it's quite an interesting life, I think, makes for an interesting life because no two clients are ever the same and you're never quite doing the same thing. So I suppose maybe we should talk a little bit about the history of witchcraft,
Witches.
Professional witchcraft.
Cunning
I
folk.
suppose maybe we should talk because again we normally market ourselves as witches. I mean we get called cunning folk, magical practitioners, occultists, that kind of thing. Doesn't really matter, does it? At the end of the day, people have their own words to describe things, so we don't really care so much about the words.
Which is just one I'm just comfortable
It's a popular
with,
one in Europe.
and kind of explains what we mean.
Yeah.
But
in terms of a small or short history of magic or the magical professional, I suppose.
Yeah.
So starting with, let's get the classicist to talk about the ancient world in terms of before there was a difference between magic and science, and what was there. I mean, a lot of people had their own.
Well, which is a modern word,
Yeah.
and by modern we mean a couple of 100 years old. It's not really a word that would have been used in the ancient world, but then they have a different understanding, the paradigm's different. So it's a case of, well, I need to speak to a god because magic is held by gods. So therefore, in order to tap into that power, you need to have found that bridge. So with that, it comes down to folk magic with altars at home. In that kind of paradigm, you're talking about making a place for magic to exist. So a statue or a votive is a place for that entity to enter and therefore bring that magic into that space. So that works the same with an amulet or anything like that. It's about inviting that energy in.
Yeah, well, I think humans have always been interested in how things work, and it's been necessary for survival to be able to predict things, to see what's going to happen, why, why does it rain, why are the crops failing, that kind of a thing. And as human society, I suppose, evolves, so does their religious practices and their magical practices, and it's really an understanding of what I suppose a lot of people would say the unexplained, the mysteries, that's difficult, but then also witchcraft more being the practical applications or techniques that you can use to control and explore that. Certainly the difference between nowadays, definitely in the West, is that most mundane people, most ordinary people have no magical practice. Whereas throughout history there's always...
It was part of their daily life. Yes, you went to a professional if you needed additional service. So you would go to a temple and you would get the priestess there or the priest to actually perform that magic on your behalf.
Yeah.
And I suppose they are probably the closest you would get to professional
magical
practitioners.
Nowadays, if you're in the UK and you get sick, you go to the NHS.
Yeah.
If you need justice, you go to the police. In the ancient world, your family, because you'd be in a more tight-knit family, maybe several generations in one house. So it's a case of, the grandmother, grandfather know the healing remedies that get passed on because this kind of thing works.
Self-sufficiency.
Which would also incorporate magical parts as well and practice. And that everyone in a village or in a place, no matter where it was in the world, always had some level of magical training and knowledge. It may not be a huge amount, but it was there and it was understood. And that although there may be temple complexes, religious institutions, that kind of thing, that may pay kind of like or play a specific role.
So the healers, the midwives, those kind of, the local...
Oracle of Delphi.
The local doctor, who was just a local healer that knew more specific remedies than the ones that were held in the home. So, the ones you'd ask Grandad about or Nan about how to get the best poultice to pull a splinter out of your finger. But if you lost a limb, you'd probably be going to someone a little bit more specialist.
And it was really specialist fields. I mean, even if you're talking about...
And that moment, you're talking life or death, aren't you?
Yeah.
Splinter might be.
Even advanced, like what would be considered advanced civilizations from an ancient perspective, the Egyptians and that, you think of the pantheon of gods, goddesses, that kind of thing, and the cult complexes all kind of specialising. The everyday person, the plebs, they would have their own magical practice, but as well as you would go to a certain area and it would be like a pilgrimage to get to a certain place that specialised in, a cult centre that specialised in a specific area of magic or healing or whatever it is. I think the big difference nowadays when it comes to witchcraft is there's a more GP general practice.
Yes.
People expect us to be able to do everything, and although there are some specialities within the magical umbrella, psychics for example, or specific types of psychics, in the ancient world it's a case of what you would do is everyone would know a little bit, but then certain people would dedicate their lives to really knowing and going down a rabbit hole really deep. And it would take a lifetime to get there. Where did that really change? Because compare that and contrast that with today, with not that many people, certainly in the West, retaining a lot of magical knowledge and stuff like that, and services that people are more reliant on from the split between science and magic. We obviously still work from the science and the magic working together. But nowadays, that there's a big difference with the approach people take and the words that are given to practitioners.
A lot of that will disappear on the fact of, what we call the Dark Ages or the resurgence of the church, shall we say, has then meant that they took on many of those roles and then controlled the way in which that access to that information was. which meant that more and more practice went underground. Yes, you would pass on certain amounts, but you know, what limit are you at now? When we were growing up, what was the yes, you'll hear of such and such a hippie friend whose grandma knew every kind of poultice going, but the general one, the general knowledge is superstition.
Yeah.
It's you know, 2 magpies mean good luck. Like, you know, that reaches right the way back to auguries of the ancient seers who would be able to predict weather patterns or the rise and fall of the monarchy. You know, like we just still in the Tower of London are caged ravens. Like there's that is the closest we probably get to this magical history that we used to have.
Yeah, I mean, to a certain extent, I mean, you can talk about the mystery schools, so the complexes and stuff that would specialise in teaching advanced magical knowledge in specific areas. How did that change over time? Because, of course, the difference, I think, when it comes to magic is that very often I tend to find is if a practitioner can't find someone worthy to pass their knowledge on to, they're happy for it to die out.
Yeah.
And you'll find the ending of a lot of great mystery schools
is down to that.
Is down to that.
They would rather die with the knowledge than give it to someone not worthy.
Yeah, and then you've got a lot of generations afterwards trying to pick up that knowledge. But at the same time, they're essentially having to rediscover it for themselves, maybe with fragments to go on, not even that a lot of the time. So where was the really big turning point then when it came to magical practice from, you know...
I suppose when we started separating things as science.
Okay.
Because you got...
So that's again still pretty recent.
Yeah, you've got that where things... it's only science if it's provable, if it can be tried and tested on a repeat... It's repeatable, should we say, is the scientific method. Can I repeat the action and get the same response?
Normally with physical ingredients, I suppose you would say.
And a visual reaction. And by that, it literally stretches all the way to, I can see it with this microscope, or I can see it with this test. I can prove it.
The physical sciences, when you look at the evolution, I think, of science and the change in magic, it's kind of, to a certain extent, you can see it as okay, let's start from the very beginning again and work things out from there. So science evolved through the physical sciences. So what can I physically see? If I take this layer off and see down here, you know, where I can see that, I can understand that now. So you're talking about being able to see, you know, whether it's gravity or something like that, and then when someone has a solid form, how do I get to the next stage beyond that? Well, I've broken it down by cutting that.
Yeah.
I've put that under a microscope, I can see that. How can I see beyond that? Well, we have atomic structural theory, or what's beyond that? And then you kind of go in stages. What you do tend to find is, of course, with science, is you're starting from the very beginning again. So, you know, it's a case of, I suppose to a certain extent, when I think about construction and renovation, are you going to renovate a building or are you going to tear it down and start from the very beginning? And science is essentially torn it down and started brick by brick from a foundation up. Of course, it's the reverse because it's breaking things down. Essentially, you're looking at smaller and smaller parts. And the things that science has left behind when it comes to, I wouldn't even say energy work, because you know we've got atomic bombs and things like that now. Radiation, you've got electricity, for crying out loud, very magical. It's a case of there are certain things that get left behind only to be included when science progresses further down that hole.
But they're all a progression of the next, of the previous. Like, whereas it's not a case that there are very few people going, okay, let's start again. I understand all that going, but I'm now going to go, if I bang these 2 rocks hard enough together and start again, they're not going to. They trust the scientific method to, this is how you get this.
And most of the time, I mean, normally when it's in the textbook, it takes a completely radical person to then take it out of the textbook. It takes a long time for that to happen.
And even if they can get to make it work, it's still got to pass all the various different people and their levels of proof.
Yeah. And I think also the difference as well is that you're seeing it from magical knowledge is often taught quite differently. When it comes to magic, you're learning the principle, you're learning the technique, and then once you've mastered that technique, it opens up to you being able to learn and see how it works. Whereas what you have to do from science is the opposite. You learn how it works first, and only when you understand how it works, progress on further and further. So when it comes to greater mysteries, that kind of a thing, what happens after you die, that kind of a thing, science takes the approach of, we're going to keep not assuming anything until we can progress that and see past that. Let's see what happens when you put a body in a weighted chamber and see when someone dies, does it become lighter, or let's trace every single atom that is a part of this body, where does it go, that kind of thing. Or I can't see a change, therefore nothing's happening, kind of thing. Whereas from the techniques from the witch, if you ask the witch, well, how would I work out what happens?
It's also guided by to use. So the things that get left for magic and mystery are the things that have no practical application. So if it could magically, if there was something about passing on knowledge from one to another, and for them to know an answer to something, they probably still would be interested in what's happening beyond life. But actually what they want to do is make more money, find more items, live longer. Those are all achievements they want to make, whereas actually from a magical perspective, how does that differ?
Well, I think magic nowadays as well gets lumbered in with religion and spirituality. So magic's always been practical. And it's when you master magical technique, that then opens the doorway for you to explore beyond that. So you literally, it goes from science to magic to religion. Whereas nowadays what it tends to be is you either have to be in one of the three camps, or the religion dictates the science. So this can't be investigated, or this can't be a theory because the Bible says it's not, or something like that.
Whereas to me, the magic part has always been a lens.
The magic part,
one side or the other.
I see it as the glue that holds the two together, because when you get, what you'll find is the further into science you go, the more into magic you go. And the more, and quantum physics is normally that kind of the gateway that it starts to cross over. And then the more into magic you go, the more of course into religion you go. The problem is that you have to explore all three of those areas, and it progresses. It's not you pick one, such as religion, and that dictates the answers. It does for the plebs, unfortunately, and people control people by not educating them, and also telling them what to believe and threatening them, essentially. Which magic, like I was always told by many people, that witchcraft is very much of the people. It's something that's accessible to everyone, that really pushes themselves down that path. There's no money, there's no financial or class, essentially, that
it's for the gain of the community.
And with practical applications to things, that's what you tend to find a lot with witchcraft. I mean, most of the people that come to us as clients, they want something to happen, and they're not able to do that on their own. A lot of people may see magic as a trick fix. So rather than doing something the long way, you're actually, I can wave my hand and just do that, instead of going, I want to become rich by waving my hand and muttering some incantation or spell, as opposed to putting the effort in. And a lot of people will say that no, that's not right. I mean, you can do that.
You can.
But the problem is that less if we take money, you can start up your own business and learn and grow that business and make a lot of money from doing that. Magic related, you need to understand magic, push yourself, your abilities further and further, which takes time and effort. So if money's the answer, that's the objective. Time and effort is involved creating a business that would make you that, but time and effort is also involved with getting yourself to the power level that it would take to wave your hand, I suppose. It is quite a funny thing because, of course, it's not like we can't take someone in the space of what's our consultations on average, like 15 minutes, 20 minutes, sometimes 10 minutes or less. And actually getting them to manifest something is not like we're going to say it's going to take you 6 years to get this spell to work. It doesn't work like that. But in terms of wanting to learn everything, it's a practice at the end of the day.
So back to that.
Yeah.
So, professional witchcraft. So that's we've given that kind of history of, the understanding of magic, the way in which professionals have lent into cultural exploration. So now about what does that mean to us?
What does professional magic mean to us?
Yeah, so when we say we're professional witches, what exactly do we mean?
Well, essentially magic, occultism, is the information that is mysterious and secret that science, I suppose, doesn't have the answers to. So you either go to the weirdo that explores that kind of thing, the weird witch that lives in the, the cottage at the end of the street.
Yeah.
And they have a strange ability. I mean, witchcraft, witches, all of the iconic witches of the past, whether it be the Witch of Endor, Circe, cunning folk, those kind of people, they were always had one foot in both worlds. They had more knowledge than the average person, and they were meddling, quote unquote meddling, with things that people shouldn't know about, or people should not wield that kind of power. And because it's a mystery, because magic is a mysterious art and is an art, kind of an art and a science, it's a kind of combination of the two. It's people don't understand it unless you're practicing it, and therefore everything that we do looks strange. But there's always a reason for it. And the problem is that most of what you're familiar with when you look at witchcraft is told to you or spun to you by someone that doesn't understand witchcraft. So when you watch films or read books or all that kind of thing, the people that produce those films, make them, write the book, they don't understand magic. Sometimes they understand it to a small amount, but generally speaking they don't. And when you see someone doing a spell, for example, you'll see a bunch of ingredients put together that you think of a bit like chemistry. This ingredient plus this ingredient plus this ingredient. It's always a weird one, like eye of newt or wing of bat, put together, and then something magic happens. It's because you don't really understand
The language.
how it works and the reasons for that. And that's a big part that you're missing. Because unlike with a lot of the scientific approach, and I use chemistry, if you understand what this chemical structure is, that one, get these various chemicals and add them together and they have a reaction and produce a result. Magic isn't really about the tools that you're using or the ingredients that you're using. There's something else going on. You're only noticing the stuff you're physically can see, the things that your eyes can see, and there's a whole level beyond that you're not necessarily understanding.
Because we're not taught to see it anymore.
Well, people aren't taught to see it. Some people do see it naturally, but it's something that we help people understand that kind of thing.
Yeah. And why psychics only tend to be interested or pushed towards giving messages for dead people or giving messages for other hires is a case of, well, actually you could be using that gift, that natural ability, to direct it in other parts. The job involves seeing beyond the veil. has practical applications beyond what they're currently using it for. But that's exactly why they end up in the psychic category rather than the witch category.
I mean, a professional witch, professional cunning folk, whatever, service magician, there's lots of terms. If you're charging money for a service, it's a business at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So, like many businesses, you have to market the services that you're selling. If you're a medical doctor, you may be a GP, you might do a little bit of everything. You may be a surgeon, perform surgery. You may be a specific type of surgeon, a neurosurgeon, for example. Now, words evolve based on the work that you do, and magic, or the magical community, is a little bit like that. You have psychics, the psychic arts, for people that work from seeing, channeling, that kind of a thing. In terms of, to give you an idea of what the witch does and what we do, is it is kind of like the GP. We're supposed to be able to do everything, unfortunately.
Or enough of it
Yeah.
in order to get the result necessary for the client.
Yeah. So we vary in the fact that although we tend to go under the Witchcraft brand and call ourselves witches, it's more of a case of we are both from Britain. We practice magic, and magical practice in Britain's often referred to as witchcraft. Now, it may not be entirely from a dictionary definition of the word. It may be difficult because you're talking about, the oldest term for witchcraft is baneful, not particularly nice, evil, dark magic. You also have kind of the witchcraft trials and the legal terms for witchcraft, but then you've also got the archetype of the witch, the professional, the person that you see, or you knock on their door late at night because, there's a wart growing somewhere that it shouldn't be and you need it got rid of. Or you want to put a wart somewhere that no one knows about on someone else that you don't like. It's one of those things. And the archetype of the work in the magical community, it varies. So a big problem with us, of course, is that we have to, because we see so many different types of clients, we see people with different religions, backgrounds, people with different interests within magical practice. Some people are interested in hoodoo, some people are interested in witchcraft, lots of different types of magical practice. And because we help people from any type, because we just go by magic and the person, we help them push their own system or the system that they work. It can be a difficult market in that. So we try to be as bland as possible, but because we're in Europe and in Britain, witchcraft's what most people tend to resonate with and think, oh, magic, yeah, okay. You can
You're using words I now understand.
Yeah, you're using words that I understand. It doesn't mean that we don't practice magical systems outside of witchcraft per se, and of course we do. Ghost? Yeah, probably.
Or physics.
Physics. Same thing, isn't it? But there we go. So, yeah. Is there anything else to add?
Well, no, other than kind of probably what we do. So consultation work.
Yeah.
How a consultation would work. We can go in the most blandest way possible.
Okay, so in terms of, if we're trying to describe our personal procedures, normally what we'll do is we have several businesses in a magical, metaphysical kind of department area. I don't know what you call. We do
field.
Yeah, field, I suppose. We run events. We are both practicing witches. We teach.
Yeah.
So
have our own clients.
Normally what we try to do is promote and educate people. So we do that by holding various different events, classes, that kind of thing. But also because people don't necessarily have an interest in magic, but they want to harness the power of magic. So for example, the person that wants a new car and thinks, I'll